In my last video about The Last of Us Part 2, I described it as a well thought out, ambitious follow-up to the masterpiece that was Part 1. Today, I'm going to walk back on everything I said.
You suck!
Okay, just kidding, I'm not going to do that, but I am going to talk about it. The last video was almost entirely focused on the story, which I believe was deserved, but I still have a lot of things to say about this game that don't involve the story. So I hope you're ready for my poorly formed opinions and bad jokes, internet, because it's time for The Last of Us Part 2. Analysis. Part 2. Again, spoilers for both Last of Us games, so if you haven't finished either of them, go do that shit. What are you still doing here, dude? These first few points probably go without saying. They're pretty much just here because I didn't bring them up in the first video, so I'll make it quick. Point 1. The game is fucking beautiful. I mean, look at this. And this. The fact that the game is like 100 gigs makes total sense when you see how much detail went into the world and the visuals. Point 2. Just like the first game, the soundtrack is amazing. Holy shit, Gustavo, you've done it again. It's very minimal but still encapsulates the tone of every scene, and I could listen to it for hours. Point 3. The performances by the voice actors in this game are incredible. Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson killed it as always, and some of my favorite moments in the game came from Laura Bailey's performance as Abby.
Are you wearing my backpack?
Isaac is played by Jeffrey Wright, you know, the guy from Westworld, and they only showed him like twice, which is my first real problem with the game. Remember last time when I said it wasn't perfect? We'll come back to that. Okay, now that that's over, let's talk about the gameplay. One of the things I've always loved about this series is the combat. The fact that you can't carry very much ammo or supplies means that you never really feel overpowered. Almost every encounter requires a degree of stealth and planning. Depending on the type of enemies you're facing, you have to use the listening mode to map out the room and carefully decide which guns or throwables best fit your plan of attack. So when you enter an encounter with low ammo or supplies, deciding the order in which to murder all these dudes, or sneak around them, I guess you can do that too, becomes this very intricate puzzle that you have to get right or else you'll get blasted in the face. For example, the last time I played through the elementary school encounter as Ellie, I started with one bullet out of all my guns, and so begins the puzzle. I had to really map out where enemies were and use stealth takedowns and craft Molotovs with the few supplies I could find. And figuring it out felt so satisfying because I did it on my own without the help of an arsenal. This lack of excess ammo also makes finding a supply cache or safe feel super rewarding because you know you're going to need every last bullet you find. But this also leads me into my next problem with the game. The safe puzzles are entirely too easy. There are a few decent safe puzzles, like when a note in a couple's apartment says the combination is their anniversary date, but doesn't say what it is, so it's up to you to figure it out. You have to look at the calendar on the wall and find the date for 30th anniversary, and then do some quick maths to figure out what the date would have been 30 years prior. I like that. That's a pretty good puzzle. So why weren't there more of those? So many of the safe combinations are just found on a note in the room or in the area the safe is located. There was already so much thought that went into the collectibles. I particularly like the notes about Boris from the Hillcrest neighborhood. I'm getting off topic. Why put so much thought into creating interesting, unique collectibles and then not put any effort into the ones that contain safe puzzles? Anyway, staying on the topic of exploration, why do you open lower cabinets so fucking slowly? Searching drawers and cabinets for supplies is such an important part of this game, and generally opening drawers and picking things up is pretty seamless. But for some reason, opening ground level cabinets is like 3 times slower than anything else. It's a small issue, but oh my god, it drives me nuts. Also, I just want to give a quick shout out to Nakey Jakey for pointing out the auto pickup function in his Last of Us video. That is a game changer, and I wish I would have known about it during my first 3 playthroughs. Love you, Jakey. He doesn't know who I am. Although most of the gameplay mechanics are carried over from the first game, there are some additions that I think improved on the first game's formula. The ability to dodge melee attacks is in no way new to video games, but it was such a welcome improvement on hand-to-hand combat in this series. Ellie and Abby are much younger than Joel was in the first game, so it makes sense that they would be faster and more agile when it comes to combat. Same with going prone. Nothing new in the video game world, but definitely helpful when it comes to stealth gameplay. Crawling through the tall grass to sneak around an enemy can sometimes be the difference between a successful attack and getting pinned down and murdered. Another new mechanic that doesn't really affect the gameplay but is just really cool and interesting is the new weapon upgrade system. In the first game, when you found a workbench, you pretty much just saw a menu with all your weapons and the available upgrades, but you couldn't see what was physically being done to your weapons. In Part 2, not only do you see Ellie or Abby switch between the guns that you're viewing on the menu, but once you choose an upgrade, you actually see an animation of the upgrades you're making in real time. That's such an interesting detail that I don't think I've ever seen in a game before, but if I'm wrong about that, I'm sure you will let me know in the comments. The guitar mechanic, much like the new weapons upgrade, does not directly affect the overall gameplay, but it was a new and refreshing twist on the way the game tells a story. The guitar was such an important part of Joel and Ellie's relationship, so Naughty Dog choosing to make it a playable opening to some of the cutscenes was just so cool. I've said cool too much, I need to stop. And the fact that anytime you're at the theater you can just sit down and play whatever you want gives the player the opportunity to be creative. This has led to a ton of videos on YouTube of players covering real songs on a video game guitar, including Mark Hoppus from Blink-182. By far the most impressive and yet underutilized new mechanics in this game are the most realistic rope physics that I have ever seen in a video game. This is the definition of groundbreaking advancement in game design. I'm convinced some developer at Naughty Dog sold their actual soul to make this rope work the way it did, and we only use it like 5 times. Imagine how exciting the puzzles could have been if that rope was actually used to its full potential. And in combat, if you could use it to set traps or tie up enemies or infected, oh my god, what could have been? While there was already a decent variety of human and infected enemies in the first game, Part 2 includes some additions that I believe give some combat encounters an extra layer of difficulty. For human enemies, the Brute category is basically the tank of the enemy faction. They're generally fucking huge, can take much more damage than a regular enemy, and deal heavy melee attacks that can instantly take you from full health to practically dead. Also, this one looks like Miss Trunchbull from Matilda. Although not technically human enemies, guard dogs accompany WLF soldiers and can throw a big ol' wrench into a player's stealth encounter strategy. Dogs can pick up your scent and can spot you much easier than the sometimes laughably unaware human enemies. Once a dog has your scent, you basically have to throw them off your trail or quietly kill their handler and then the dog in order to keep your cover. I also want to make it clear that I do not like killing the dogs and I only do it when I have to. Please don't at me. Now for infected enemies. So stalkers technically aren't new to the series. You encounter them only twice in the first game, and I really don't count the hotel basement because I remember making it through that area without any combat last time. Full disclosure, I usually grab the keycard, start the generator, and then sprint for the exit. In Part 2, stalkers take a much more active role and can really add to the fear and difficulty aspect of the game. They're faster than clickers and are fully aware of your presence. They'll hide behind corners and wait for you to either spot them or turn your back before they attack you. Entering an area and knowing that you're being watched but not knowing where from makes for such an unsettling experience. Shamblers are like the hybrid between bloaters and runners. Rather than throwing little spore bombs at you, they'll just straight up charge full speed into you and explode their disgusting toxic gas cloud in your face. You better pray you've got some trap mines handy and a wall to hide behind, because otherwise you're running away from a giant fart monster hellbent on boiling you alive. The Rat King to this day is one of the most terrifying gaming chapters I've ever experienced, second only to PT. Full disclosure, I don't play a ton of horror games, so maybe you can take this with a grain of salt. When it comes to horror, I am what could be described as a whiny little bitch. But just in general, the entire hospital basement chapter with Abby is super unsettling from start to finish. Getting down there to find out that basically all of Seattle's first infected citizens were just left there to turn, and then hearing rumbling and growls behind barricaded doors lets you know right away that this will not be a fun experience. Even now, having played this section 3 times, I still have to ask Jetpack to stop what she's doing and come sit with me every time I enter the ambulance. The fact that it starts as a chase sequence before getting into the actual boss fight just adds to the tension. I never feel fully prepared for this boss fight, which is a trait any good boss fight should have. The Rat King is ridiculously fast for how big it is, and it can break through walls like nothing, so running away to get some distance gives you very little time to stop and craft a pipe bomb before you have to start running again. And even after you've dealt a pretty significant amount of damage, the strongest stalker in existence peels itself off the giant glob of bodies, and now you have to fight them both. If it wasn't for Abby's pure determination to survive to get Yara her medicine,
Dying here.
motivating me to keep going, I probably would have just given up, laid down on the floor of our apartment, and cried aggressively. But no, I persevered, I defeated the Rat King and his little stalker minion, and I got Mel the equipment she needed to save Yara's life. And then they all died anyway. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I didn't really leave myself a solid ending point like I did in the last video. This was more just me ranting for a bit. My thoughts on this game haven't changed. I still love it, and I'll continue to come back to it the way I have with the first game, but there are definitely some things about it that I wish were different or just better utilized. But let me know in the comments if you agree with anything I brought up, or if you didn't. That's fine too. I have at least one more Last of Us video planned in the near future, so make sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter and Instagram for updates and whatnot. And as always, thank you Roxy for editing this video. Okay, bye.